Good evening and welcome to the City School District Albany Board of Education meeting. On behalf of the board, I welcome you to our web-based meeting. We are so pleased that many people have been joining us virtually over the past few meetings. It has been a very difficult time to be talking about our budget, which is very difficult this year, but many people have been joining us, and we hope that there will be as many tonight as we come into the final stretch of finalizing the budget. If you would like to share instructions with a friend about how to join in, you want to send them to albanyschools.org/BOE, and they will be able to find the instructions there. Also, we always record our meetings, and the audio files are uploaded just a few days after the meeting on our Board Docs platform. Doing these meetings by web is part of our effort to ensure that our meetings remain accessible to the public while also protecting the health of our community and doing our part to reduce the transmission of COVID-19. Normally by law, we meet in person, but as a result of Governor Cuomo's Executive Order 202.1, we may legally now meet by video conference, and we plan to do that until further notice. If you are joining us from home, we will show the relevant slides and documents in the virtual meeting screen where the flag is now, but you can also access them at albanyschools.org/BOE if you want to see them in more detail in another window on your own device. We invite those of you who choose to join us as we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it
for which
stands,
it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with
liberty, and
justice for all.
justice. In addition to saying the Pledge of Allegiance, we always focus our meeting by restating the mission of the City School District of Albany, which is to work in partnership with our diverse community to engage every learner in a robust educational program designed to provide the knowledge and skills necessary for success. As you may have noticed, I caught my throat on that a little bit tonight because in this difficult budget time, it is very hard for us to live up to our mission and our vision around what we need to do for our children. With that difficult introduction, as we head into this difficult and hard conversation, I'm going to turn the microphone over to the superintendent. You will all notice who are following the agenda at home that we have a standing item called routine consent on our agenda. We do not have any routine consent items tonight, so we will not be voting on routine consent, and we will go directly from the superintendent's report into the COVID-19 operational report, which is also from the superintendent. So it will flow as one tonight with no interruption for routine consent. With that, Superintendent Adams.
Thank you very much, President Savage. Registration began this week for students selected in our 4-year-old pre-kindergarten lottery. Our central registration office is closed to in-person registration due to COVID-19. However, families may register online or by U.S. mail. You must register by May 22nd to hold your child's seat for the next school year. If you are registering by mail, your materials must be postmarked no later than May 22nd. The lottery for our 3-year-old pre-K program is coming up on June 3rd as well. Also, a reminder that elementary magnet registration remains open through Friday of this week for families whose children are selected in that lottery. Please visit our registration section at albanyschools.org for more information. If you have not yet been counted for Albany, the time is now to complete the 2020 U.S. Census. The census has continued moving forward this spring in spite of the closures and significant precautions in place due to COVID-19. However, our city continues to need to improve the state as aligned with the state and national averages. Through the end of April, a little more than 44% of Albany residents had completed the census. That compared to 48.5% statewide and 54.3% nationally. So we need your help in getting caught up and spreading the word. It is easy to complete the census online, over the phone, or through the mail. It takes 10 minutes. And that will help shape how our city will look for the next 10 years. There are millions of dollars at stake for our city if we can make sure that every resident is counted and our population surpasses 100,000 for the first time in 30 years. For more information and to complete the census online, or for information about jobs available with the census, please visit 2020census.gov. Finally, an update on our board meeting schedule. We have another budget meeting scheduled for Thursday, when we will continue to review and refine the budget proposal that we will talk more about tonight. We also have a budget meeting scheduled for next Tuesday, May 19th, as well as a regularly scheduled board meeting next Thursday, May 21st. All of these meetings will continue to be online as we adhere to the important social distancing precautions. At this time, I will transition to the COVID-19 update for today. In alignment with our vision, mission, and goals, we look to still make sure that we are keeping student achievement, the delivery of quality instruction, building our leadership capacity, empowering our families, and partnering with our diverse community through these very difficult budget times, as well as during the time of our COVID-19 closures. We know that the objective of this portion of the presentation is to always provide a summary of the process and the things that we have done between board meetings, from one meeting to the next, because as we know, things are changing rapidly, and we want to make sure that we are keeping our community informed. So there are two items that we want to address tonight, and I will ask that Mrs. Karen Bechtel, who is our Director of Curriculum Instruction and Professional Development, she will assist with this portion of the presentation, and we will talk about calendar, and we will talk about grading, and specifically looking at third quarter and fourth quarter guidance. So the first item that we are looking at is our calendar, and there are some particular items that we need to explain because we are looking at an extended closure. So I will extend this time to Mrs. Bechtel.
Good evening, Board of Education. Just an update on calendar. As you know, we schedule 187 days in our yearly calendar. 3 are snow days for snow emergency days. 2 are 2 additional professional development days as a part of the APSTA contract that do not count as student attendance days. And that gets us to the 182 student attendance days by contract. That's just by way of reminder of how our calendar works. As you know, I came back a few months ago to put forward the idea of half days for the voting days in April and in June. As you know, there is no need now to do that. So we would like to recommend that we amend the calendar to reflect that those are full student attendance days as per the SED guidance. Additionally, what's been under discussion is the spring break, which by executive order, we continue to provide instruction to students. That included 1 district day off, which was on Good Friday, and then 5 days of spring break. Those are days that if we continue to conduct instruction, we would be well over our 182 contractual days with APSTA, and thus that could cause some issues around negotiating that and payment and all sorts of things. So we are looking at how we take those 6 days and back them off of our calendar so that we continue to meet our 182 instructional day obligation. And we have looked at both taking those off at the end of the year and have some other ideas that we have not quite finalized with APSTA, and will bring back, I believe, on Thursday or next week for a final recommendation. Ready for the next piece then, Superintendent Adams?
Yes, and the next piece that we are going to talk about is grading, which I know many people have been anxiously awaiting this information.
So the third quarter guidance has been steady. We have asked our teachers and our students to make up any of the missing work. This is at all at the secondary level. For quarter three, for the high school, we extended that to quarter two as well. We have Apex available at the high school for makeup for credit as well, for credit recovery. That has been our goal and our focus, largely because what we would like to do is we then moved into quarter four. I'll go there first, actually. And we are going to grade differently in quarter four, and our grading will be based on two criteria that has been developed by BOCES, our BOCES. We have had many meetings with the 24 component districts and learning what each of the districts in our area are doing, which is all very similar to one another with some few nuances for any one given district. So the evidence of learning and the not yet learned criteria for instruction in quarter four, we are recording assignments as complete or missing, and this is in our school tool system, so families are aware. Teachers are providing meaningful feedback to students on submitted assignments, and it's recommended that students resubmit assignments if they are not at the level that they should be. So this, all of this work then has been happening since April 6th, and we began new learning. What we intend to do for the final grade is average the quarters 1 through 3, because that is what we can attest to as having in a normal environment, and that would create a numeric grade for our students. It is why we wanted to make sure that students had many opportunities to make up work. We actually extended the day that they could make up work from May 22nd to May 29th. And then what we want to do as well is look at the evidence of learning and not yet learned criteria and determine how that might positively impact our that final grade. The grading committee met yesterday and had some feedback about our draft plan. And so we're in the midst of finalizing that and getting that information out to staff, parents, teachers, kids. But we did want to make sure that we are attentive to the grading committee. This is a group that consists of many, many teachers, and they are so invested in the work, and we want to be responsive to their input. And I believe that's it.
So now, if there are any questions from the board, Mrs. Bechtel and I are happy to address those questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I know many, many parents have been anxiously awaiting more information on grading, and all of us are wondering about the calendar. Board colleagues, why don't we just take those in 2 chunks? First, if there are any questions about the calendar, then we'll ask any questions about grading, and then if there are any other additional questions about other topics, we'll go on to those. So first off, any questions about the calendar, knowing full well that Mrs. Bechtel said she would be back on Thursday with the detailed next steps so that we would actually update, so that right now it's tentative, but the structure, do you understand the structure? Any questions about the structure of the decision-making process or anything? Ms. Craig?
You're muted.
I'm trying to unmute. I'm trying.
Oh, we had you and then we lost you. You're muted again, hon. Does anybody else have a question while Ellen is seeking her mute? Vicki, why don't you go in while Ellen figures it out, and then she can step.
My apologies. Mine is on the second area of questions, not on this one. I'm sorry.
Anybody on calendar? Ellen, how you doing there? You okay? Oh, there we go.
I'm trying.
There you go. Go ahead, Ellen.
There we go. Am I unmuted? Good. I
You're
just
good.
wanted to bring to people's attention that, great, this is good, that the paid time off for voting has been rescinded by the state, so that may affect our 2021 calendar, or we might want to change it, although I know it's hard to know what the 2021 calendar will in fact look like. So I just wanted to bring that to people's attention.
Thank you. It may indeed impact an amendment to that calendar as well down the line.
We probably will have a number of amendments to that calendar going forward, so we'll see. Anybody else on calendar before we move on to grading? Okay, Vicki, I think you had a grading question.
Sure, great, thank you. Ms. Bechtel, I don't want to trivialize the grading at all, but I wanted to just see if this was an appropriate analogy. So I feel like what I'm hearing you say is that quarters 1, 2, 3 would be averaged together, and then 4 would be like extra credit in a way, like
Well-
but I'm still learning new stuff, and I'm still being assessed, but it's maybe a little less strict or rigid. Help me out there.
I think I want to be cautious about calling it extra credit, because it's not. We
Yeah.
have addressed new learning. We're addressing new learning every day. But I have to remind everyone of the context. And the context is that we had teachers and students put into an environment where they had no training, where students have not learned the norms, where we have not provided that background in order for all students to have equal access to this environment in a productive way. And there are obstacles. Our students face obstacles. Our teachers have faced obstacles as they have tried to adapt to this. Now, the other issue, and I'm glad you brought this up, Vicki, is that we also have to bridge successfully to next year. So we have this fourth quarter that we have new learning. We are learning as we go how to maneuver in this system. We need to get our students back and really get those norms down. And we need to be ready, perhaps, depending upon how things go, for a blended learning environment, perhaps even another closure, where all of those grades are counting in the same way that the regular school year counts. But we need this bridge period in order to get us from one place to another.
I think
Just to thank you very much for that.
I think what's important to note is when we talk about the evidence of learning criteria and the not yet learned criteria, that's where the most meaningful feedback will be as we talk about where our students are now, looking at what they're learning in terms of new learning, and then what are some of those gaps that we're going to need to look at as we shape next year. That's our important piece. And so our assignments are still going to be counted as complete or missing. Students will have opportunities with which to resubmit assignments, but they're also going to get meaningful feedback from their teachers with regard to those standards that they have learned, and what are those standards where there may still be gaps. And I think that's the important focus that we want to make sure that we are emphasizing.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say, I really, really appreciate that. And as I said, I didn't mean to trivialize or, or simplify the process, but I was trying to get my head wrapped around it. And it sounds like, if I'm understanding, the quarter 4 piece is 2 pieces. You're still figuring that piece out, but there's definitely going to be an impact. And then you also have the look going forward as to what, how that connects to the following year. So
I think that's accurate, Ms. Smith. And I think that what we are looking at is some type of a point system, but I do want to pay attention to the teacher feedback that we got yesterday about how exactly that would look, how it would look, and then really clarity around that evidence of learning and not yet learned.
Ms. Wilson.
Thank you. So my question about this grading piece, and forgive me because it was kind of breaking up a bit, but you've allowed there to be extensions for credit recovery and makeup work, and this is throughout K through 12.
This is a secondary grading situation. We have not yet finalized what we will do for elementary. We are thinking about a narrative. We're thinking about, where a child is and what they possibly could do over the summer to make up some gaps. But that has been, that's up next on the list to get to in order to have clear understanding of those. Mhm.
But so basically for secondary, there's this opportunity to go back to, I want to say go back last semester in order to boost your average over the last 3 semesters, correct?
We are allowing high school to go back to quarter 2 and 3. So quarter 2 would have begun in November, and quarter 3 began in January.
I think that's outstanding. Perfect. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that, and I couldn't tell if that was quasi the same thing as Vicky's question. It was just breaking up for me on my end. So I'm sorry.
No, it was perfect. Thank you.
Mr. Elmanyawi, did you have a question?
I actually have more of a comment, and I know a lot of our families are listening in, and I just wanted to say thank you, Ms. Bechtel. So this is a really great opportunity for our students to catch back up and get a better grade for quarters 2, 3, and 4, right? And I really would like to see as many people as possible take advantage of that, especially considering we have another 2 or 3 weeks until those back assignments would be due. But if you get that in, if students get that in, I'm sure GPAs will go up. So please do so.
And I just want to follow up with that by telling you that administration is working closely with the teachers to collect the data around when kids are participating, who might owe some of that work, and working with kids too, phone calls, emails, and even visits to encourage students to participate and get that work in.
Thank you.
Anyone else on grading? Dr. Chitoor.
A quick question: Did we address the digital divide, or are there kids still needing access?
I didn't hear. Were you speaking to Wi-Fi?
Yeah, right. Wi-Fi, Chromebooks.
So
I think that
I can address that. We're still working right now. It's decentralized to the schools, and so connecting those families, with those hard to reach families, the schools are still following up with some of those hard to reach families.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Mann.
At our last board meeting, we talked about those hard to reach families, and I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but weren't there only a handful?
Mr. Baker, I don't know if you have any additional information that you can add in, or Cecily Wilson-Turner or Lori McKenna, if you have heard, but we have had outreach from not only our teachers continuing to do the outreach, our teaching assistants and our hall monitors are doing that outreach, but I will refer to Dr. Wilson-Turner, Ms. McKenna, as well as Mr. Baker, if they have any more information to add.
At the elementary level, it was a very small number. And I think, as we mentioned before, we have deployed every effort we can up to social distancing home visits with our staff. And so principals are actually making an effort with their staff to make sure they're contacting families, not only the ones that we are still trying to reach, but students who aren't engaging as frequently as we feel that they should, who were engaged one time and haven't engaged again. They're keeping spreadsheets and logs of that to make sure that they're doing that follow-up as frequently as possible without overburdening the family. So if they've made the connection, the family's saying they're okay and that they have what they need, they're just continuing to check back in that way. But a lot of buildings have assigned their teaching assistants, their hall monitors, their homeschool coordinators, their community school site coordinators to make those calls and then roll those names up to the principal themselves to ensure that that contact is constantly being made.
And that is also true at the secondary level. In addition to everything that Cecily just mentioned, we also have engaged our student support team at the district level and our school resource officers and attendance teachers. And they are also doing an outreach to our families, especially our hard to reach families that we have not been able to make contact with.
And I can quantify a bit, just looking at the dashboard right now, I can see that we have 146 families identified as no contact, which across the 10,000 student roughly district is a fairly small group. And that encompasses our pre-K to 12, so it could be even a smaller group. And in terms of meeting the need as it exists regarding access, we are literally in single digits in terms of having the need that exists versus number of devices or whether they be Chromebooks or Wi-Fi hotspots right now. So at the moment, we are, as soon as things are identified, we're able to meet the need that exists for all of our students.
I'm sorry, at one point we were waiting on some hotspots to be delivered. Those came in order for us to be able to fulfill that need?
No, so we're expecting that group of 500 any day, but we've got them already pre-assigned and ready for distribution. So I'm projecting we're able to meet the need as it exists.
I see, I understand. So that from the family's perspective, they still don't have the hotspot in hand, but from your perspective, as soon as it comes in, you know where it's going and it's a matter of just distributing it and you're expecting those shortly. Is that right?
Correct. We've got the high priority students who are identified in terms of hotspots. We have about 200 out there now. And as soon as the rest arrive, they will be expedited to families.
Did I see a hand up someplace? Ms. Wilson.
So just a question about in the event that there's any overlap between students in secondary who are, if they may be on that list waiting, do they still get the benefit of the look back period, like to catch up?
We are going to do everything that we can to ensure that students are successful in this environment that we find ourselves in right now.
Thank you.
I just had a quick question regarding, have we thought about how we're going to handle students who encounter technology problems in the future? And I'm thinking about, a student might have a tablet or a laptop that works now, but might, as somebody I knew recently had a terrible incident with a lot of water that destroyed their laptop. So something like that, if somebody has a machine problem or machine failure, are there going to be machines available in the future, or is that person out of luck for the rest of the year? Which, might be possible. I'm just asking.
I think that this will be certainly a part of the task force work about how to ensure that our technology is in place, the Wi-Fi is in place so that students can be successful and participate 100% fully. That will be the goal. So I would say, Ms. Creasy, you should wait for some of the reentry planning, and you will see where we will look to accommodate students and families.
Okay, thank you.
So y'all may have noticed, people in the public may have noticed a few chuckles on that last comment. The person that Ellen knows who had a distinct disadvantage on their computer and a glass of water would have been yours truly, who left an open water bottle in her bag, which was unfortunate. But I am back in action, so, but yes, that was subtle. Anybody else have questions about the grading? We were on grading. Tabitha? No, you're good? If not, any other additional questions about COVID closure? Tabitha, I see your hand.
Yes, it's not grading. It's about sort of the opposite of Ellen's question. I was going to ask about naturally teachers and their ability, like their instructional comfort with delivery. And I know we're approaching the end. So I was just curious, are we doing things in the realm of PD with teachers right now if they're having any difficulties transitioning to this style of teaching and things of that nature.
That's a great question. I'm glad that you asked that. One of the way that we built the model for instruction is that there are grade level teams. For example, all of the 6th grade teachers in the district in ELA meet once a week with the instructional supervisor. And that has been very powerful because, number one, as you know, our 6th grade teachers are in the elementary buildings and then they're in the middle schools. But even when they're in the middle schools, they often only have the opportunity to work with their team and not necessarily that content group. So we have seen a great application for Zoom in trying to keep that that meeting style up for particularly at that 6th grade level across district, so that we can continue to support those 6th grade teachers in that specific area. Having said that, the CPT time, the additional PD time that the elementary principals have had with their staff, that we have had at the secondary level, has really been focused on dealing with the obstacles and the challenges in the moment. And as we've been doing that, we've been raising capacity of all to participate. Another good example is Jeremy Dudley, who is our instructional tech coach, has been doing live and then sort of taped, recorded professional development that then another instructional supervisor will take that item into their CPT time and show that and talk about that application. We are also going forward with our May 19th PD Day, which is next week. And we are limiting the live portion of the day to about 90 minutes, and then providing a menu of both instructional tech and social emotional online learning that the teachers and other staff will be able to access at will. In addition, Mr. Baker's taking advantage of that day too to get out our EdLaw 2D regulatory training. That will be an hour online training as well. So we have a robust day planned, and we know that we have to continue supporting the online environment between now and the beginning of the year. And again, a professional development plan will be part of all of the K-12 re-entry plans at elementary, middle, and high.
Just a quick follow-up on that. Is that going to change that May 19th PD Day? I suspect has fallen off of many people's radar since it's not the vote day. So is it to be expected that teachers will not be available for students as they normally are in their office hours and their class times that day because they'll be doing PD that particular day?
Yes, and we will be getting that notice out, I would imagine, in tomorrow's daily email and family communication, and have that every day for the next few days. Yes, we will indeed do that.
Okay, thank you very much. Totally fell off my radar completely. Board colleagues, other questions about COVID closure? I know some people are listening in. I know we asked this last week, but we asked part of it last week. If we could get another little update on how the thought processes are moving forward on graduation for Albany High, which I know we heard a little bit about last time, but also any thoughts of moving up acknowledgements for our children who are moving out of their elementary and secondary schools who are not actually graduating?
Yes, we can have that for the next board meeting to update you on some of the plans that are moving forward.
Okay, but I think we can, for folks listening at home, they can rest assured that plans are evolving. There will be an Albany High graduation of some kind to be
Correct.
determined, that they're working on it with children, and they've had a couple of meetings, if I recall correctly,
Yes.
with the seniors and with the senior class officers. So
Yes, so the high school has met with students. Ms. Comerford has met with students to look at what some of the possibilities for recognizing the seniors would be, as well as the moving up ceremonies at the elementary and middle school level. Principals are working with their teams to see what those will be. We have not said that we're not having them. They're just going to take a different look because of COVID-19 and with regard to social distancing. We will be looking at how we can still recognize our students and have some type of quality acknowledgement for them, for their moving up ceremonies, for graduation, in addition to other recognitions that schools may be doing. How are they able to incorporate that virtually?
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else with any questions about what's happening right now? Because we're about to mentally shift into what's happening next year. So now is the time to ask questions about now. Okay, then let's move forward into the heart of the meeting for tonight, which is the discussion, another discussion of the 2020-2021 budget. Mrs. Adams?
Good evening, and thank you so very much, Madam President. We are here to share with you updates with regard to our budget. And we want to make sure that, as always, we are looking at our vision, mission, and goals, even during these unprecedented, challenging times. There are tough decisions that have to be made that we do not always like the outcome of that, but we still know that there are very tough decisions that have to be made. And so with that, we look at the purpose of tonight is to, again, update the board on the budget development process, share strategies for closing our budget gap. And then at this time, I will turn the time over to Ms. Roaring, our Deputy Superintendent, to discuss our revenue pieces and our budget changes. Thank you.
Good evening, Board of Education. This is something that we've touched on a couple of times during the 2020-21 state budget. They have created these opportunities for 3 different look-back periods. At these points in time, they will assess the state's expenses versus revenues and potentially make adjustments that could impact the district either for an increase or a decrease. And we will learn those things as we go throughout the year. We have had a couple of state budget changes. Mrs. Bechtel discussed a little earlier this evening the possible calendar implications from the repeal of the paid time to vote. While we have seen a decrease in charter tuition for next year, we are also realizing or anticipating an increase in enrollment, both at Green Tech and KIPP due to expansion of those schools. This is our adjusted rollover budget that we've shared. It takes us to about a $15 million difference. This is where we started our budget planning for the year. This looks at that rollover budget by category: salaries and benefits versus tuition, debt service, transportation, in a pictorial way. This is our anticipated revenue increase for next year of $1.2 million. These are several different tax levy scenarios. The middle column looks at what the total dollar increase on the tax levy would be at that percent. And the column on the right looks at the amount of adjustments we would need to make to the budget to bring it into balance based on those different scenarios. When we look at the revenue by category, you'll see there's some increases and decreases spread throughout. Again, getting to that $1.2 million or a little bit less than 0.5% increase year over year. This is our timeline with you. When we look at the budget increase drivers and reductions, we started with the rollover increase in February of $15 million. We have been consistently working over the last couple of months to bring our budget into balance. Since last Thursday, we have identified an additional approximately $3.9 million in reductions to bring this budget into balance. You'll see that about $10.5 million of that is associated with salaries and benefits. We've realized an increase in equipment, contract services, and transportation primarily. If we look at these a little bit more closely, we're looking at a reduction in positions of somewhere between 168 and 174. We have made an additional reduction in equipment of about $60,000. The adjustments in contract services include some fiscal fee adjustments we were able to make in the business office and an SRO position. Further reductions in our field trip transportation allocation, and then we were able to realize some additional savings through the transfer of service back into the district from BOCES for a total of $13.8 million.
So part of our reductions also look at our enrollment and staffing ratios, because as our enrollment either increases or decreases, we have to adjust our staffing in alignment with that. And so I wanted to take an opportunity to just show the full picture of where we are in terms of our actual staffing and enrollment and looking at those particular ratios. During the years of the 2015, 2016, the 2016 and 2017 school years, we were at about 42 to 48 administrators, support staff, 499 to 562 employees. Teachers were at, and I say teachers because that is the union, but it's also inclusive of behavioral specialists, school psychologists, nurses, and coaches would be in that number as well. And so when you look at in 2015 to 2016 and 17, there were 837 APSTA members and 907 APSTA members. Our management confidential positions moved from 24 to 33. And then NA does not mean not applicable. Those are our non-union or non-association members, which moved from 47 to 41. And then you're looking at the total staffing numbers. And then we have the enrollment numbers starting in 2016 at 8,997. In the 2017-2018 school year, you can see that the enrollment moved to 9,061 students. With that, there was an increase in staffing to accommodate the increase in students. And so from 48 to 63 APSA, 562 to 630 APSU, 907 to 927 APSTA, management confidential 33 to 38, and then our non-union would be 41 to 49. And so you can also see the respective increase for total staffing. In the 2018-2019 school year, you will see that our enrollment dipped a little to 8,821 students. And so the staffing, when you look at APSA, that's 63, so that remained the same. In APSU, from 630 to 645, that was an increase to meet the needs of our students. Looking at 927 APSTA, an increase to 948, also to meet the instructional demands and needs of our students. Management confidential remained 38, and the non-union dipped from 49 to 40. One of the things that we were seeing during that particular school year was that even though our numbers were dropping, we were noticing what are the things that we need to put in place for our students to be successful. And so when you look at the 2019-2020 school year, you're going to see that our enrollment dipped to 8,500 students, 8,580 students. And in the APSA, we moved from 63 to an increase to 69. We looked at APSU, which was 645 to 665. APSTA, 948 to 982. Management confidential, 38 to 41. And our non-union from 40 to 52. One of the things that we also noted during the beginning of this year, as we were making plans last year, looking at if we could reduce that student-teacher ratio, we could see gains in student performance. If we could increase coaches into different positions, we could look at the support for our teachers. Of course, looking administratively, if we could add assistant principals, if we could look at those ranks to make sure that we're able to provide the support for teachers throughout, as well as for the campus throughout, then we could see that. We also saw an increase in our hall monitors. We looked at our homeschool coordinators. There were various clerical positions, et cetera, that we put in order to meet the needs of our students so that we could look at trauma-informed care. We could look at the social emotional well-being. We made those choices to bring those resources into our schools so that we can provide that to our students. So when you look overall, the budgeted the percent of staffing, you can see the percent of staffing for each of our units as well as our non-union members. And then you can look at what is budgeted for next year. So this is where we are headed. And when we look at our FTE reductions, you can see how those reductions align, as well as the percent of the staff reductions for each of our units. At the bottom, these are just gross per student ratios, meaning that based on that total number of member in the unit, that's how it parcels out when you look at the ratio between everyone in that unit and the students. So there's an adult to student ratio, and that's what the bottom of our chart is showing. And so when we look back at the 168.5 positions that we've identified for reduction, 67 of those positions have been absorbed through attrition. So the next slide, and I know it's probably very small, but we will go through this, and this is going to take a little bit of time, but we want to go through so that we can identify each area. And I know that there may be questions from the board, but we want to make sure that we take the time to explain each of the lines. And so what you are seeing is these are the budget adjustments that we are sharing with you today, so that in our attempt to close the gap with regard to our budget. So the first piece that you see is administration reduction. These are combined and eliminated positions, looking at 6.5, and that has to do with some of those positions may be management confidential, but it all falls together there. And there may be some questions about which positions are combined and which ones are eliminated. And if you, and I'll look just for a nod, do you want us to go into that detail now, or would you like to circle back and ask questions?
I think at this point, if Damaris, are you saying you think she should walk us through all those line items now?
I think that would be helpful.
Okay. So let's, as you know, with some brevity, but you know, a couple of sentences about each one is probably helpful.
Okay. I will go to, at this time, I will ask Ms. McKenna and Dr. Cecily Wilson-Turner any additional comments with regard to the combined positions or the elimination of positions for administration.
So the administrative positions are a result of retirements or position eliminations at both the elementary and secondary level. And between the retirements and the elimination of positions, we've been able to reallocate the existing staff, which resulted in that cost savings.
Here we go. The next line looks at changes to athletics and freshman sports, and being able to merge freshman sports into the junior varsity, and the reduction of the varsity, not all of them, but varsity assistant coaches will be reduced. The next line looks at the elimination of 3rd, 4th grade instrumental music, and I will ask Ms. Bechtel to please share the background on that.
Hello. Okay. So this is the 3rd and 4th grade instrumental music line, and I will keep it succinct. We thought hard about creating a really robust 5th grade program, really trying to recruit kids at that point and get them ready for the middle school, where they have a larger environment in which to participate in music. We had talked about the brass instruments being hard for the littlest kids to actually manage with their fingers. in those kinds of instruments. They don't make little kid band instruments the way that they make some strings instruments for smaller children. And we thought that we could grow the middle school and the secondary program with a very, maybe a more aggressive, robust 5th grade program, getting kids ready, as I said, for that comprehensive middle school experience.
Our next piece looks at the elimination of 2nd grade swim. There are some additional cost savings there with regard to the transportation and the support and the staffing where we have to pay for the lifeguard. The next piece would be program reductions with regard to field trips and looking at Sienna Scholars. That program is going on hiatus for a bit of time, just so that we know that they may come back, but at least for this year, that program will be changing. And so by them being on hiatus, that is a cost savings for us as well. Reduction in equipment and supplies, and I will look to Ms. Roaring to address that.
We made some adjustments in these areas, looking at making sure that we were aligning categorical aid revenue with the associated expense, and made adjustments to our software line, our textbook line, our instructional hardware lines. We also looked at a number of equipment reductions in other areas of the district, focused on finance, administration, maintenance, and security. The supplies, were looking at the building level allocations of discretionary funds.
Okay. And then after the reduction of equipment, the reduction of contract services, and that can be a combination, but I'll start with Ms. Roaring.
So when we looked at contract services, this does touch across nearly every department in the district. We made some adjustments in maintenance to our preventive maintenance and service contracts. We made adjustments in finance, looking at our fiscal fees and borrowing expenditures associated with our bands and construction. We were able to make contract service reductions associated with the ombudsperson, some advertising and communications out of the communications department.
We had some reductions with regard to security as well as technology. And those particular pieces, those were a part of that reduced equipment and supplies as well. And then also with regard to contracted services. So both of those, they kind of overlap in each of those categories. The next category of reduction in discretionary money to schools. Each school, the allocation, we reduced that by 30%. And so that is what we are looking at, the cost savings. And so those dollars are used for particular programs that schools may want to do with their students. And it would be those enrichment types of things that they might want to do. But those are the areas that's been reduced by about 30%. We've looked at the revised projections. That was over time moving forward in the area of finance, instruction, maintenance and operations, and our revenue. We were able to see that come forward. Cabinet and our management confidential, looking at a salary freeze, you can see that dollar amount there. And then the next two I'm going to take together and ask Dr. Wilson Turner to speak to the elementary classroom reductions as well as the elementary encore. And that may also be Ms. Bechtel may assist with that.
So the elementary classroom reductions are a result of class size increases at the elementary level, as identified in previous board presentations by the superintendent, with kindergarten increasing to 24, first and second grade to 25, all the way up to sixth grade increasing to 28. And so as a result, based on our enrollment projections, we would be able to reduce class sizes or reduce classroom sections to meet those class sizes. As a result, our elementary encores that support those class sections will also experience a reduction. And so we look through our encore areas of art, music, library, and physical education to see how we could reduce based on enrollment in class sections as needed.
And next, I will have Ms. McKenna address E&L.
So we were able to reduce 2 E&L teachers at the secondary level as a result of efficiencies in master scheduling at Albany High School specifically, and looking at class sizes of 30, which resulted in 2 FTE savings.
We looked at our instructional coaches and Ms. Bechtel.
Yes, this is the result of a model change. As you know, at the elementary level, we had 1 literacy coach in every building, and the math coaches were split between them. We are going to follow that same model for the elementary literacy coaches and have a half-time coach in each of the elementary buildings.
Ms. Roaring will address maintenance and operations.
Well, here we looked at reducing our part-time cleaning positions across the district. Also looked at some of our maintenance mechanic positions. We are not filling retirements and vacancies that currently exist in the department, and also a reduction in clerical support.
The next 2 lines looking at staffing reduction other. These are stipend positions, substitutes, various clerical, TOSA, curriculum, communications, positions in those 2 areas. And then I will turn the time over to Ms. McKenna to look at the secondary core, secondary encore, and secondary reading, as well as security and special ed.
Okay, and I'll have Ms. Bechtel, my trusted colleague, jump in if I fail to mention something. The secondary core, encore reductions are a result of 1, looking at scheduling efficiencies, and 2, increasing class sizes and not backfilling vacancies, resignations, or retirements. And that holds true for both encore and core. At the secondary reading, at the secondary level for reading, we were able to look at the number of students requiring academic intervention services, and again, scheduling efficiencies and reducing at the secondary level reading teachers. The security, we looked at ratios, building needs, and I say ratios, and I mean enrollment at each of the buildings, physical plant layout, and whether it was an elementary or secondary level. And we were able to, based on those ratios established, reduce our hall monitors and not backfill the assistant director, which resulted in 12.5 FTE reductions. At special ed, again, we saw a slight decrease in our special education numbers for the 2021 school year, and based on the alignment of the programs at the elementary, middle, and high school level, we were able to realize a savings of 3.5 FTEs. Same holds true with speech. One was a vacancy that we did not fill, so we were able to eliminate one of the 2 vacancies and not backfill the other. The student support, or I'm sorry, the behavior supports, excuse me, behavior support specialist. Dr. Canzoni Ball, Dr. Wilson Turner, and I met and looked at the behavior specialist model and redesigned it to be more of a consult model to teachers, which resulted in us shifting or reducing from 19 behavior specialists down to 12. So a reduction of 7, while allowing every building, elementary, middle, and high school, to receive some level of behavior specialist support at each of the buildings. Staffing reductions for other support. I can speak to the social worker, psychologist, and the nursing. Again, we looked at ratios and aligned the ratios, the staffing to the ratios, which resulted in 2 social work reductions, nursing, and psychologist. We also have reduced the Hackett after school program by 50% in that line as well. And I'll let Kimberly speak to the lunch supervision piece.
Here, this is a composition of 2 items. One, we have reduced our lunch monitors by 2 FTEs, and we have also reduced by 10% the allocation that is for lunch supervision from some of our support staff, which is additional time and compensation.
And then the last item that we have is a staffing reduction of teacher aides and assistants. And this would be eliminating the teacher aide and assistant positions, and that would be 53.5 positions. So none of these decisions are easy decisions to make. We have struggled with just the sheer magnitude of what we are looking at doing, as well as how services will still be delivered to our students, and looking at what we're going to be able to do as we move forward for the next school year. You will see that on the next slide, we are looking at the current gap as being 0 with all of these recommendations and all of these proposals in place. This would close that gap that we started with.
Mrs. Adams?
Yes.
I think now would be a good time for us to stop, because the level of information starts to get pretty complex with everything we've done now, and you're about to shift into talking about contingencies and some different topics. So would you be open to having a question period now, and then we'll go on? Is that okay with you?
Yes, that would be fine.
Okay, I want to start by admitting an omission. With the absence of routine consent, I forgot to acknowledge the existence of the public comment period. Of course, as always, the board really welcomes public comment. We've been interested in what's been happening with our virtual meetings. We've had more than 600 people tuning in to the last 2 meetings. I don't know how many are there tonight. We'll find that out at the end of the night. But that's many, 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 many times more than we would normally have in an in-person meeting. However, the number of people speaking or sending public comment has been 0. We've had the opportunity to have people send comment by voicemail, by email, and by regular US mail, which we've made available, and we are not getting public comment that way. So I encourage people who are out in the world to please do reach out to us, because we really appreciate it and learn from your questions and your comments. It's always very, very helpful to us when we get people to give us comments. And so I apologize for skipping over that. The absence of routine consent threw me off. With that, I do want to go on to board comments and questions. And I'd like to, if it's okay with my board colleagues, ask you to, before we get on to the 2 really substantially new slides, which were the one that we were just on with the many details and the ratio slide, before we get on to those, to ask if there are any remaining questions from what came before. Those are the slides that we've seen many times. Do we have any questions about those preliminary slides, not counting the ratio slide and the budget adjustment slide? And I'm going to need you guys to unmute, because you're all just pictures on my screen. There's something going on. I can't see hands being raised.
I don't have questions about the earlier slide. It's predominantly this slide.
I agree. This is Vicki. I agree as well.
Amherst, did you have a question on the earlier slides?
Well, no, I was just going to agree with Ms. Smith and Ms. Wilson.
Okay.
My questions are about this current slide.
All right, so are there any questions on any, does anybody want to ask any questions about the ratio slide or
No,
comment on it?
one quick question.
Yeah, Dr.
Between the last one, the last adjustment and this adjustment, there was about $50,000 change in the transportation budget. I just wanted to understand how what changed.
Mr. Lesko will address that, please.
I'm sorry, the question was about the additional
savings in transportation.
In the transportation budget. That we are recommending taking an additional $50,000 from the field trip contract line that we have with First Student. We have not spent that entire budget on field trips. We've actually used it to supplement in other areas, McKinney-Vento, student transportation, which we've had growth in and are anticipating additional growth in the coming year. Also in this school year and 2 school years ago, some additional special education transportation. So we feel like we have the flexibility there to reduce by an additional $50,000 in that line. That still leaves about $36,000 or a little bit more in that line to provide field trip opportunities for students in addition to virtual and remote and distance learning opportunities that we also can pursue for our students.
So since students aren't going to school right now, is there any savings on the transportation right now? Or are we
I know that
going
Ms.
back?
Goring has previously said that we don't yet know whether the net total will be a savings. Even if there's a savings in one line, we're expending additional monies on postage and on additional PPE and additional overtime and that kind of thing. I don't know, Kimberly, if you wanted to speak to that question for this year.
I'm sorry, the question was
Dr.
around savings in transportation?
Dr. Chateau was asking if we had savings in transportation this year, but that really opens a larger question about this year's net position overall.
So I'll try and speak to the net position overall. I would defer to my colleague, Mr. Lesko, on the details of the transportation contract. We are looking at some recognized savings, particularly in our areas around testing and the associated costs of running those testing processes every year. We are, as you mentioned, spending some additional dollars associated with acquiring the PPE and things like that that are necessary for our staff and volunteers to maintain those essential operations in the district. Right now, we think we'll have a positive net out on those. That is something we're continuing to gather data on every week, as that is a moving target.
Thank you.
And as it regards our contract with First Student this year, obviously there hasn't been student transportation since Friday, March 13th. We've continued to stay in close contact with First Student about that situation. We've had many conversations and still are awaiting guidance from the state of New York about transportation reimbursement for the current school year. So those pieces are up in the air. We have First Student has been a great partner to us in our meal delivery service, so that they have 20 buses operating currently in that function for us right now.
Okay. Any other questions about the preceding slides? Otherwise, oh, Ms. Krejci, do you have your hands up?
Yes, I had a question about that main budget adjustment slide for 512, not the detailed one, but the one right before the ratio slide. Is this the time, or should I wait on that as well?
I think if it's really about the budget adjustments that we're talking about, the specific budget line items, I'd rather just wait and do those all together, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
All right, so does anybody have a comment or question about this ratio slide? Does anybody want to ask anything about this? I'm only calling it out because I know it's the first time that we've looked at it in this format. And I once again cannot see hands, so if you have a question, you're going to need to unmute for me. Vicki, go ahead.
Well, Madam President, my question is kind of a combination of both. I'm happy to go in the order that you, perhaps have used in the past. And I'm happy to go next to last.
Is anyone there? Everyone's frozen.
I'm here.
Well, we can hear you, Ellen.
Yeah, we're here.
Okay.
So
I did
go ahead.
commenting on the ratio slide. It was really edifying to see this, and it was at once, depressing and yet somewhat encouraging to know that what we're going to be going back to after all this is still more staff for fewer students than we had 5 years ago. It's really a hard position, but I think this is really helpful to understand how everything has broken down and how many more students, how many more teachers we have in the classrooms than we have in the past, and that they're still going to be getting that benefit.
Yeah, I wanted to add that I also found that extremely helpful and understanding. I mean, we know that we've been doing, as the superintendent said in her opening remarks, when we've been adding staff that we needed, right? Our students need every staff member. Every single member that's on our staff is a much needed one. There is no one who is extraneous, but we did need to see that dropping student to staff ratio as we did for the last several years to help our kids move forward and turn things around. And we were starting to do that. So I agree with you, Ellen. It's helpful to visualize a little bit how it will be, in that the staffing for budgeted for next year overall is not terribly dissimilar from how it was a few years ago, but it's still difficult. Mrs. Adams, did you have anything you wanted to add?
The only thing that I wanted to add was that even though the staffing goes back, roughly 5 years ago, and it puts us at that level, we know what's needed for our students to demonstrate success. And that's why over the years, you see the increase, especially in our student teacher ratio. You see that number of staff with regard to the wraparound services, the classroom teachers. That's extremely important because we know that those are things that are necessary for our students to be successful. We have the social emotional well-being of our students. We look at trauma-informed care training that our teachers look to use each and every day with students that they see each and every day, along with what are those strategies and best practices that we embed into our instructional program and building that support. And so along with that, that's where you see with support staff, where those numbers have steadily increased because we know that, number one, none of us can do this work alone, and it takes all of us together, working together to make a difference in the lives of our children. And so even though we can compare and see where our budgeted positions are relative to the past, we also know how critical it is to have the right staffing for our students, making sure that we are delivering quality instruction on a daily basis. And it does take every one of us working together to do that.
Any other commentary on this slide, this ratio slide, commentary or questions? I cannot see hands, so you're going to need to help me out.
No.
And this is Damaris. I'm good. No other questions.
I'm good, Ann. Thank you.
I'm good too.
Same.
Okay. So then let's move on to the big slide, the slide with lots of words on it, let's call it. And what we're going to do is use the old format we used to use many years ago in the board, in prior boards, and go around in a particular order, and we're going to use that same order here. We set this as our default in case we stumbled onto this sort of video problem. And so as we always do, I'm going to ask each board member to ask one and only one question. You will definitely get a chance to ask a second question. We will not stop asking questions until everybody's questions are all answered. That's how we do it with budget. It doesn't matter how long it takes. We have to understand the budget and we have to get our questions answered. But the first question, the very first question, always goes to the newest board member. So Mr. El-Menyawi, what is your first question?
Thanks, Anne. And I wanted to first off say that this is incredibly difficult, unprecedented time, financially devastating time for so many districts, so many businesses, so many people. And I understand that this is extremely difficult, and I can't even imagine what cabinet had to do to get to this point. So thank you guys all for putting this together. That said, I do wonder, I'd like to know how many positions could we have saved had there been some kind of salary freeze? I understand that there's something like 160 positions that. Can we get on to the right slide?
I see the right slide.
I do not.
You do have it in your email as well, if you can get
Yeah.
access that way, or separately off of Board Docs, you can get to it that way.
I've got it on my other piece here, so hang on.
I think we're looking at a total of 168.5 positions.
168. So if somebody could give me kind of a number of positions that could have been saved or could be saved if we can get a salary freeze.
So I will address that in that there are several things that we are working on. We have looked at retirement incentives, and right now we don't have a number for that in terms of those positions because it does depend on who the retirees are. And we are in communication with the bargaining units with regard to what those retirement incentives might look like. We did have the conversation with regard to salary freeze, and that was presented before. It's a total of 52 positions throughout the organization that we will be looking at if those measures were taken. But we're also looking at other measures as well. Are there retirement incentives that we could do to help accomplish that same goal? And those are things that we're working on. And even if they come in after the fact, we can still make adjustments, but we have to present a budget that shows here's where we are, not, where we anticipate, because we have to present the board with what we have right now. And so all of those discussions, we know that they may help us in some way, with regard to looking at our retirements, et cetera, then those changes will be made because I will say that there are some, as we engage in this reduction in force process, there may be some unintended impacts, which will need to be addressed over the next few days and over the next few weeks, because there may be some additional changes that have to be made. But those things are aside from this process right here. We have to show with what we have where we would be.
Thank you. So just to put it in perspective, the number currently is 168.5 positions. With additional efforts, salary freeze, retirement process, we could probably get it down to close to 100.
We would have to work to see what that would look like. I don't want to quote a number because, again, it's very different. It's just very different. We'd have to look at that, and we have to look at all of our options.
Thank you.
Ms. Mann. And Mr. Aminawi, if you could mute your microphone. Thank you. Ms. Mann.
Took me a minute to unmute my microphone. So as I understand, we have about 157 special education teaching assistants, TAs, and then another 54 general education teaching aides. And so the reduction of 53 and a half teaching aides is looking at our general ed TAs, correct?
That is correct. We would be looking at eliminating those positions. Those are our general ed TAs. We do have about 157 special ed TAs. That the 53.5 positions, that does not include special ed. It does not include in-house suspension nor pre-K. And so we would be, and that would be across the board, elementary and secondary.
And the purpose of the TA is to, can we kind of talk about the purpose of that position?
So the purpose of the TA is to assist the teacher in the classroom, to work with small groups, to assist with if students need additional help, they can do that. They assist with, you know, I don't want to say delivery of instruction, but ensuring that the instruction is delivered to the child in a different way if they need one-to-one, if it's small group, to assist the teacher with whatever the teacher may need with regard to that delivery of instruction. And so it is, I'm not going to deny that it is a critical position, and it is one that it's not taken lightly, but looking at where we are in terms of our budgetary needs right now, this was something that we felt we had to bring forward for that type of discussion.
And in regard, no. And so in the absence of a salary freeze, teachers will not have access to TAs, correct?
Mrs. Adams, you're muted, my friend.
I'm not going to limit it just to that, because there are other options that can still happen. And so it's not just about a salary freeze. These are about other decisions that have to be made about programming, about the delivery of service. When we look to embed practices in that delivery of instruction, it's bigger than that. And so I really want to emphasize that there are different ways of us accomplishing the goal that we need to look at. And that's what Cabinet is doing. We are looking at what retirement incentives might be beneficial and see where we stand with that. We are looking at how can we combine the delivery of services and embed some of those practices that you see. So it's not just a one solid answer. Right. It can't be. Just as you see the eliminations and the reductions and the things that we're doing behind those decisions, we have thought about, if those things go away, what's going to happen so that the quote service doesn't go away? What's going to be a different model? If you look at where we have the behavioral specialists, when Ms. McKenna spoke to that, we're looking at a different model to support our students with regard to behavioral specialists. And it may be shared positions. It may be redefining of some of those responsibilities. And then how do we deliver that in a different way? And so I don't want us to get locked into the fact that there's only one answer for resolving this. There are many answers that we just have to explore along the way.
Thank you, Mrs. Adams. I think that's important for us always to keep in mind. This is really a very big puzzle, right? There's different pieces and different shapes, and they all have to fit together in order for us to make it work. And we all know that none of these things are things that we want to do, right? If we weren't short by such a substantial amount as a result of the state aid change, we would not be considering these things. I do want to stay on this topic for a couple of minutes because I know that other board members had questions on this topic. So rather than bouncing around, I believe Ms. Smith, you had a question on this, and then Ms. Wilson. So let's do that. And then we'll see if anybody else has a question on this topic before we move on.
Great, thank you. And I appreciate the superintendent's comments and the comments of my colleagues prior to me. Superintendent, you just triggered something in my own mind here. And it was kind of mentioned earlier, there are places or areas like the instructional coaches where you said there was a different model. You later used that with, I think, in the behavior specialist area, the different model. So my question is this: is it possible for you, for cabinet, to perhaps look at a different model around the TAs and consider some adjustments there? Because you pointed out those supports are very critical, and we would be able to maintain that support or some more of it, and perhaps save a position or two or maybe more. I just wondered if that was possible.
It is possible. We can absolutely go back and look at maybe a different model so that we don't have to lose so many of our teacher aides and assistants. But what that means is that dollar amount, we will still need to meet that dollar amount. It's just what will be the impact of making those changes, because that will impact something else. It doesn't mean that we cannot do it, and we're happy to look at that again. And then perhaps on Thursday, we could share that out with what that different model may be, knowing that if changes are made in that line, it will impact other lines, or there might be something new that comes up, and we would absolutely be able to explain that to you as well.
Okay, understood. Thank you so much.
Is that what the board would like for us to do with regard to looking at the staff reductions for teacher aides and assistants?
Yes.
Okay.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Okay.
So
then we will look to do that. We will absolutely look to do that.
as I
Go ahead,
suspected,
Ms. Wilson.
thank you so much. Sorry. As I suspected, I kind of knew somehow that my colleague, board member Smith's question would be in alignment with my question, because I had that question about overall, literally, have we done the models for part-time, half-time, third-time, quarter-time
Yes.
shared work environment? So,
Yes.
you know, as much as we can look at that just so people can see the illustration, I think it's going to be helpful. And just to your earlier point about it's not simply just freezes, I appreciate that you said that, because I don't want people to think that we're gunning for them in that way. But at the same time, yes, we do have look back periods coming down the line, and we do have other things that constrain us if certain things don't happen. So it's not like we're doing that arbitrarily or looking for like the lowest hanging fruit. It's just simply like, it's the Jenga, as I always say, you know, that we're trying to perform right now to make things fit and work.
Board colleagues, does anyone else have a question or comment on the TAs topic before we move on?
No, I don't have a
Dr. Chair.
question, but I second Vicky's request to see the second scenario, just to get a better understanding, because if, I mean, I can't even imagine a whole, you know, a model without any TAs, because that pretty much wipes out 100% of the general ed TAs, right?
Yes. And I'm going to add to that my concern that it's exacerbated by the fact that we're looking at increasing class sizes. So to be looking at both TAs, it just feels like the classroom teachers' jobs are going to become so difficult, and the ability to do. We know in our district there's incredible amounts of differentiation needed in order to challenge every student, to meet them where they are and help them get where they need to be. And doing that with a single employee, a single staff member in the room, with a larger number of students is hard to imagine. I will comment also that we don't really know what school is going to look like in the fall. We all know that that's open, and a certain person in a pink jacket will have some influence on that in her new role on the reopening committee at the state level. But nonetheless, we don't know what the fall is going to look like. So we don't know that a larger class size is actually going to be a larger number of children in the room at one time. So I am very saddened and worried about the absence of the TAs. I feel that they are an absolute backbone to our success in this district. And I would like to see if there's a way that we can maintain as many of them as we can. Because they are delivering direct instruction, right? They're actually touching students every single day, and they provide a really important resource. Nonetheless, I do recognize that school may be different, and so we will have to see what you all come up with on Thursday. Okay, I think I was the last one with something on TAs. Ellen, did you have a new topic you wanted to raise?
I had a general question about back to the ratio slide, and it was essentially, do we know, I know on the previous slide, it's a reduction of 174 positions through attrition and reductions in force. Do we know the breakdown as to which are attrition and which are actually reductions in force? And do we have that breakdown through bargaining unit? Because I understand that the impact of a retirement may be the same on the balance sheet as a layoff notice, but it really feels very emotionally different to those that are impacted. So I'd really like to know what the breakdown is as to how many people are getting those reduction in force notices in each bargaining unit.
Okay,
I should add, if that's something that we know, if that's something we know at this time.
Okay, so yes, we do have that information. We have prepared that as part of the backup information. And so those numbers are there, and we can parcel it out a little bit more closely and perhaps create a slide for the next board meeting where it's summarized succinctly in a one slide versus the lengthy backup information.
I think that'd be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you very much. That would be helpful.
Dr. Chittor, did you have a topic?
All my board colleagues have touched on the questions that I wanted to ask. So.
Ms. Wilson, you would be next.
Thank you so much. And no, I didn't really have specific commentary about the earlier slide, but just an overall sentiment that, you know, I'm living somewhere between, if this were like a, what do you want to call it? Like a sort of like a spectrum between disappointment and anger, because really more than anything else, and I realize people see this as like final, it's a work in progress. More than anything else, this is like, who are we asking to pay? And we're simply asking our students really to pay in so many ways, because, you know, we're in this austere environment where like public education is not really being emphasized or supported in the way it should be, because, you know, naturally not every parent could opt into a tuition-based school. And where do students go when they can't be in charter schools anymore? So, you know, it's beholden on us to take care of them. And we're sort of being asked to do all this jujitsu again to make these adjustments, but it's just simply not fair. So sorry. I was just gonna have a question about, you know, and it may sound semantics, but when we say elimination, I think sometimes here, and you brought this up earlier, and I want you to be able to reiterate that for people listening, that some things are not being eliminated, they're being embedded. And it sounds semantical, but it's a big difference. And similarly with even elementary music, it's not like we're not eliminating elementary music, we're transitioning it because it's going to be in better alignment with a child's development. So it's not really an elimination as a consequence of the budget. So I just want people to hear that and know that and give us the opportunity to call that out, because people just will see this and think, you know, we're just looking for these gains, these easy gains, and where we can sort of gain money back and things of that nature, but it's not simply that only.
And that is correct. None of these are easy. None of these are easy. And you are absolutely correct when you say that at the end of the day, the people who are going to be impacted most by any of these decisions are the children that we serve each and every day. And so none of these decisions are made lightly. They're not without thought. They're not without what are the things that we can do to continue to deliver services to our students. But when we look at how we have done professional development, we look at different strategies that our teachers are able to use. We look at how we can embed practices along the way and look at how it just becomes any strategy, any professional development, how does it become a part of how we do business? Those are the things that are extremely important. And where we can, those are the things that we are emphasizing. And so again, it is It is a very difficult time. It is very challenging. And none of these decisions are made lightly, none at all.
I'm trying to make this as close to the free-flowing conversation that we have in our normal in-person meeting as I can. And I believe Ms. Krejci wanted to comment on something that Ms. Wilson said. Ellen, did you want to do that?
Yeah, I had wanted to comment along these lines, and it does sort of build on what Ms. Wilson was saying. Some of these eliminations really are as much COVID-19 related as budget related, which is to say there are certain things on this list that aren't happening right now for public health reasons. Second graders aren't swimming, Sienna Scholars is not meeting on Saturdays. And I know that they are having small group instrumental music lessons online, but I don't think you can really teach beginning woodwind or brass players who are 8 years old how to play their instruments online, or you can't do it with appropriate social distance. So things like that, I think it's easier to understand that we're simply recognizing the savings for what we most likely would have to do anyway. And you can also see that to some extent in the building maintenance for now when the buildings are closed. But it gives the building maintenance reductions give me a little pause for concern, because if we do reopen, I would imagine it would be with some highly stepped up protocols as to what we do. I think we have, I agree with setting it up this way now, but that I think to some extent that does give me a little pause for concern as to how we're going to keep these as to when we reopen, how will we keep these buildings sanitary with so much less help?
And I think I can chime into that with regard to, and it does depend on what school looks like when we come back in the fall. If we have fewer students in the building, what does that look like in terms of maintaining our facilities and cleaning and sanitization of our buildings? So a lot of those decisions are going to be predicated upon what is school going to look like. You know, when we talk about reducing staff, we also have to think about what is school going to look like, and then how are we going to be able to maintain the facilities with the staff that we're going to have at that particular time. And so we will be working through those challenges as well.
Ms. Smith, did you have something that you wanted to add?
Sure, thank you. I wanted to just echo a great deal of what my colleague Ms. Wilson said, and also a bit of what Ms. Krejci also spoke about. But I wanted to go slightly a different way. Again, this is a horrible time, and no board, no school district wants to be in this position. No, we don't want to put staff in this position of losing their jobs and their livelihood. But I do want to just highlight a couple of things. We don't want our kids to be in a horrible position, but we do have an opportunity to continue to think outside of the box and to think differently about how we view and look at teaching and learning. And I personally believe, Ms. Krejci, that we're going to be looking at a slightly blended model, type of approach for a few years to come, if not, always building it in as a, as a safety net, as a precaution, something that our society will have to face due to some sort of crisis like this. Be it natural or other. But I also wanted to just point out that all of this raises the inequities and just time and time again across our state, the inequities, what our Black and Brown and our English language learners and our economically disadvantaged students are all having to deal with and face, their families. And indeed, some of the folks, employees who fill these reductions fit in some of those categories as well. So I just wanted to echo a lot of what both Ms. Krejci and Ms. Wilson said, and what has been said before about the challenges, the difficulty, and how I too feel this cross between being very angered about the state of affairs we're in, and disappointed that we can't, don't have the means to do better. But I'm also optimistic about what the future, might mean and what we could do together. So enough blabbering on from me, but I just wanted to, Ms. Wilson triggered something. So thank you.
Thank you. And I think this is something that we as a district and as a community, all of us, all of the taxpayers and all of the residents of Albany need to keep in mind, is that these decisions that are coming down to these questions of TAs and retirement buybacks and all of that, it is exactly as Ms. Smith and Ms. Wilson alluded to. It has been a long time coming, the need for an equitable distribution of state resources for education, and the challenges of educating in a high needs environment with inequitable resources. So it is very difficult because that inequity is just being exacerbated by this difficult period. Nonetheless, we have to work as a school board within the constraints of the rules and the existing structure that we're working in. But I did think, in terms of the model, if we think we're going to be coming back in a blended learning environment in the fall, I wonder how, as part of what you do on next Thursday or this coming Thursday when you bring the TA idea back, what the role of TAs would be in that blended learning environment and how that might be different, and whether there's a way to use them throughout the district more, although I know that personalities and personality meshing is so important in understanding each other. Teachers and students is so important, which would be difficult to do in that environment, but I'm struggling with the TA situation. Vicki, did you have a specific question also about any particular topic on this slide? Because you haven't introduced a new topic, although you've commented on a couple.
Right, thank you. My new topic is really towards the end, I guess, but it really has to do with having an understanding of the process and the budget approval process and the possibility of a contingency situation.
Let's hold on that because we haven't gotten to the contingency slide, which is going to be next. I want to stick for now on these actual items on this budget.
Absolutely.
Anybody else have a topic that they wanted to raise here?
On this slide, yes.
Go ahead, Ms. Wilson.
So the other line I see is the discretionary money to schools in enrichment areas, which I just want to make sure we can make the distinction again for people listening. This is not anything to do with community schools. This is like enrichment areas. Let's just say bringing in yoga or something. So, along those lines, we're going to have to emphasize we're going to have to emphasize outside sources, either grants, whether it be via our internal grants unit or external grant opportunities, I'm guessing. But it's just such a large number. I just want to basically call attention to that.
And you are correct. You are correct. We would have to pursue grants to look at what some of those other things might be that schools may want to do for their students. So we would have to look at outside and additional resources.
I wanted to call out a couple of specifics just to make sure that my board colleagues had recognized them in the backup material, and also to make sure that they members of the public who are listening realize that these were in the cuts. One was the elimination of our payment to the Albany Police Department for the SRO. So those of you who've been board watchers for a long time know that we have 4 school resource officers in the district, 1 for each secondary school essentially. And 3 of them are provided by the Albany Police Department using their budget, but 1 we pay for using our budget, and that would be eliminated for the budget next year, so that we would be down 1 SRO. And Mrs. Adams, I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how that might be implemented in the new environment.
I'm going to defer to Ms. McKenna, who supervises the pupil personnel services where our security rests. So Ms. McKenna?
Yeah, so we have to work with the Albany Police Department to determine how the reduction will impact our secondary schools. Those SROs are not positions that we appoint to our schools. It's based on a bidding process, and so police officers bid those SRO positions. So we will have to work with the Albany Police Department to determine the reallocation of the existing SROs, if that's possible.
And
It-
I
it
will
would be-
add
go
that,
ahead.
I'll add that provided those positions are still funded by the city, because as we know, they are looking at budget concerns as well. We would look to share those resource officers, school resource officers. We would look to share them among the middle school and the high school sites so that coverage would still be made. And of course, that also depends on what model we have when we are coming back to school in the fall.
Another one that I wanted to just call out, again, because it's been a pretty high profile program, was our relationship with the New York University and the EMAT program, trying to improve the availability of educators with experience in urban education in our schools, and that program would not be available next year based on this budget. Is that correct?
Mr. Petrie?
We are looking at another model with NYU to have them still help us train and find teachers to help fill our gaps, but we are looking for them to help partner with us and shoulder the majority of the expense related to it.
Okay.
And that dollar amount is what is reflected here in the budget.
Anybody else have another question? I have one more specific question, at least one more that I want to ask, but I know I've asked two in a row. Anybody else have a question before I ask a third?
Not a question, but I just wanted to second what the last discussion about the SROs. I mean, today's Times Union had the notice about 50 crossing guards who are going to be, the positions are going to be eliminated because, I mean, just like us, the city is facing a budget crisis too. So we're down to 3 SROs, and hopefully those positions will still remain because if the city decides to not fund any one or any of those positions, that brings us to a different situation altogether, right? I mean, right now it's like, it's crazy. I'm just stunned by, it's amazing what you guys are doing, but I just can't believe it. It's like asking a mom to pick, okay, which child do you love more? Or which child do you want to sacrifice more? And it's just not fair. Just not fair. Public education needs to be supported more.
I absolutely think, obviously, we all agree that public education needs to be supported more. And I do think it's a very real possibility that those SROs will be a problem for the city's budget. So I, as you all know and have heard me speak in board members prior, would love to see us find a more educational and use of our educational staff to do some of the services that the SROs were providing anyway, because I think that may be necessary to do, because I don't know that we will have access to them through APD, but we don't know that yet, so we'll see. I wondered if any specific look at the Albany High schedule has been made. I know that there's a number of, you mentioned, I think, efficient scheduling in a couple of the cuts. And I'm wondering if we know if there are particular classes that are not going to run, and in particular, whether any of those are sequence classes for our kids who are on a particular pathway to graduation. We've done such a great job marketing those pathways. And I just don't know, I just want to know if we're going to be cutting any of the pathways because we can't run the class with it, because we don't have enough kids.
Ms. McKenna, if you could address the scheduling at the high school.
So the Albany High School leadership team and our instructional supervisors have done an amazing job with building the master schedule And at this point in time, we are not making recommendations to reduce. We do reduce classes. We do have some classes in our IB AP program that are have low enrollment, but have students who need those to complete the IB diploma program, for example. So at this point, we're not looking at reducing those classes unless we absolutely need to.
Does anyone else
I
have?
just want to go back. The impact is not on program, it's impact on class size.
Thank you, Lori. That was actually extremely clear and very helpful. So it sounds like there will not be an issue with kids who need a class for a pathway, but there might be more kids in every classroom. Anyone else with a question or comment on these budget adjustments before we move on to the next phase? If a question occurs to you, we can always double back. It's not the end of the night, and we'll have them Thursday as well, as we hopefully receive some public comment from our community that's listening and may have better questions for us to ask, and also as we reflect on it more.
Question.
Ellen,
I
go
do
ahead.
have a question. And it's, given that we don't know what we know about what school might look like next year, we know we have to come up with this amount of dollar savings. But by what dates would we have to notify specific employees that we don't anticipate that they would have a position next year? When do we have to decide exactly who and which positions?
So we have started some of those conversations, but we have made everyone aware that this is a proposed budget. But then once the actual budget is passed by the board, then we would do the formal notification.
So we
Can we go ahead and move on? Oh, Ellen, I'm sorry, I just want to interrupt you just for a second, and I apologize. But I think that actually ties in very well with the contingency budget question, right? Because that would be that those are tied together. And so I want to move on to that question unless there's anything about these specific things. I see Mr. El-Miawi has a question. Ellen, is that okay with you?
Sure. I think I was thinking more of a COVID. I was thinking more COVID-19 related than contingency budget related. I was thinking, like something like somebody says there will be no Scholastic Athletics year for anyone, whether you have the money to do it or not. Those are the types of things I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
How can we be agile and
I totally understand. I just think I want to look at that question of how we alert people and when they have to be alerted also pertains to multiple things. So I'd like to do it all at once if that's okay. And then I think Mr. El-Miawi had a question on this slide specifically.
I actually don't have a question. I just wanted to reiterate this is an incredibly difficult time, and what we're looking at, it doesn't show what we are holding together. So obviously this is an extremely difficult, these are numbers that are extremely difficult to digest, but again, there's another piece of this pie that we're very desperately trying to piece together, and I hope everyone understands that.
Thank you for that comment. I feel that so intensely. All right, Mrs. Adams, I think we can go on to the next slide, the contingency slide, and then we can always double back to this as people have more questions.
So Ms. Waring will explain our contingency budget and that process.
So once the board puts the budget out for adoption on June 9th, if for some reason the budget were not to pass, we would most likely be looking at a contingent budget. The executive order has not identified a revote date, as traditionally would have happened in the month of June with the delay of the original vote from May into June. The contingent budget would look at a flat tax levy, which means we would look at an additional $2.3 million in reductions to the budget. We would only be able to do those expenses that are absolutely necessary to operate and maintain our schools. We would be eliminating equipment purchases that were not associated with our state-aided instructional hardware amount. Any outside building use cannot be at the expense of taxpayers. So those who wanted to use our buildings would be responsible to pay any associated costs in full in advance of use of the building. And we would also look at any pupil supplies that may be retained by the students, whether they're school t-shirts or anything, uniforms associated with athletics. We'd have to dive into that a little bit and make sure we maintain compliance with that restriction as well.
So now let's go on to begin by answering Ellen's question. Before we go on to the budget process, let's stick to this contingent because I think this is really something the board's trying to get our heads wrapped around. If there is a contingent budget or another scenario that could very well come to pass, we have a reduction in state aid after the budget is passed, right? Because we know that there's these several look back periods built in. So we could have a reduction in state aid after the budget is adopted by us or by the voters. And either of those things would require additional cuts to staff because we just don't have enough non-staff material to do those kind of cuts. What would that process be? Would we be able to, are there contractual limitations to us having teachers and staff members of any bargaining unit told quite late or maybe even into the school year that we can't continue to employ them?
So I will tag team with Mr. Petrin with regard to the process, and also with Ms. Roaring. That means that if there was something that were to happen later on, then we would have to make some adjustments at that time. And so, Mr. Petrin, if you could chime in, and then Ms. Roaring, if there's additional, please share.
Yeah. Contractually, well, I don't want to start with contractually. I think I want to start rather with as soon as we have concrete information and we are able to move forward with something, we absolutely want to move forward and notify all impacted parties, whether that's add staff, reduce staff, just provide that notice as early as possible because, as much notice as we have will allow any staff that are not coming back the opportunity to pursue other employment. But in terms of contractual notices, the things that come to mind initially are really just a June 10th notice related to the APSTA contract where we need to notify teachers of placements. But then we would have flexibility to add and remove, or not add and remove, but more modify schedules, as time goes on up until, the opening of school in September.
Okay. And obviously, even after September, I mean, if the governor had a look back period after September and we had less state aid, we would not have money to pay people, right? I mean, that's very straightforward kind of an understanding that I think there is about the way the money works.
Yep. And there are mechanisms that we need to notify certain individuals at those times. And it's all dependent on what the budget looks like at that point.
I wanted to just add in one piece of information about the contingency budget. And Ms. Roaring, you can help me make sure that I've formulated this correctly. But I know back in the distant past, before the tax cap law, was the last time that there was a lot of contingency budgets in New York State. And at that time, there were certain exclusions to the contingency budget, such that sometimes the contingency budget wasn't a big dollar difference from the actual budget. But my understanding is that the law has changed now substantially, and those exclusions are pretty much eliminated. So it is almost exactly, or possibly exactly, a dollar for dollar drop, so that you're back to last year's taxes exactly with the contingency budget. So it would be roughly $2.3 million, as you said on the slide, of additional cuts if the budget does not pass. Is that right?
Yes, there are similar guidance as there used to be in terms of what is a contingent versus a non-contingent expense. But with the tax cap law that has come into place, we are limited to the tax cap that was levied, or the tax levy from the prior year. So whatever our levy is for 1920, that would be the maximum we could re-levy for 2021. And that would result, yes, in an additional $2.3 million. So it is a more substantive or substantial difference, however we want to look at that, than it had been potentially that many years ago when that was more commonly found.
board colleagues, does anybody else have another question or comment on contingency? I have one more, but I'm happy to yield to somebody else and then come back. Okay, so then the next question I have has to do with the look back periods, state look back periods, and the potential for federal action. I want to make sure I fully understand this. I know that when I go into the voting booth as a voter on the school budget, I have to vote on the maximum allowable expenditure by the school district. So it's possible that we are going to have a reduction from the governor, right? It's very possible. And then maybe the federal government will actually support the states as they desperately need to for both municipalities and for school districts. But am I correct that if we reduce our budget based on our anticipation of what the governor's cut would be, and then we later got some of that federal money back, we would not be able to spend it for the benefit of the 2020-21 school year? We would have to use it as like reserves for some future year. Is that how it works?
I will ask that Ms. Roaring and Mr. Honeywell respond to that question, please.
Okay, I'll let Kimberly go first.
Okay, thank you. We would have to, yes, whatever the maximum allowable expenditure is that is approved by the board and sent to the voters, which they approve, that is the maximum amount we would be able to spend. So if we assumed a revenue or worked with a revenue that we know to be now of $261 million, and we were to see the federal government provide additional support to states, which impacted schools in a favorable way, we would still recognize that revenue, but yes, it would be allocated towards future years.
And the only, I agree with what Kimberly said, whatever the voters approve is the most you can spend. One little unknown caveat is that there are some very limited reasons that permit a district to spend more than the voters approved, one of which is titled state and federal grants for specific purposes. I do not know if whatever may or may not come from the federal government and come through the state could fall into that category or not. You'd have to have SED guidance on that. But generally speaking, you can't spend more than the voters approve.
And we wouldn't be able to get SED guidance on that because it's something that would happen after the budget was adopted, right? We're not anticipating any action, federal action in a meaningful time frame.
Yeah.
So board colleagues, does everybody understand that? It's really tricky and frustrating, right? Because we would like to be budgeting as tightly as we can, but if we budget too tightly and then there's additional money available, we can't spend it to save the jobs of the people we know our students desperately need. That's how I understand this. Anybody have a question? You're all pictures again, by the way, so I can't see hands. Ms. Smith, you have your mute off. Would you have a question?
Yes, just to make sure I understood what council has said here. And I understand what you've said. I understand the general thing. But so, Mr. Honeywell, you're saying, though, if we had state and federal grants, we might have an opportunity, depending on what the guidance says, to use those funds for or towards this current budget. But if not, we would have to, those funds would go for next year's allocation, next year's budget. Is that right?
Yeah, Vicki, essentially that is correct. And I want to emphasize, I am just stating that there's a phrase under the law that allows for that. I have no idea if that would be deemed by state ed to be such a grant that would allow you to exceed or not, but I just at least get that piece out there. But generally speaking, you're limited to what the voters approve.
Understood. Thank you.
So board colleagues, any other questions either on this complex state funds, federal funds, referendum limits, contingent budget, how the contingent budget works, all of the stuff that's on this slide before we move on to the next slide, which is the budget process? And again, your pictures, so unmute if you have a question. I see no unmuting, so I'm going to encourage the superintendent to go on, and if in fact somebody has a question, they'll shout it out.
So the next piece is to talk about the voting process. And we know that the voting process has changed, and we talked about this at our last meeting. And I know, President Savage, if possible, I know that this is a separate item, but because it is one of the last things that we have in this slide to talk about, would you be willing to move that conversation to this slide? Because I know that there were some things that we wanted to expound upon.
Yes. Good.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So these are the things that we talked about last time. We know that we are looking at 100% absentee ballots. The ballots will be mailed to the registered voters. Ballots will be mailed after the board approves a budget, and then the ballots must be returned, submitted no later than 5 p.m. on June 9th. And so we will keep updating. And I know that at this time, I'm going to ask that Ms. Bowie, our board clerk, and Mr. Chris Honeywell, who has been working with us with regard to our vote process, that they are available to answer any questions that our board may have. And so I'd like to open up the floor for questions with regard to the vote process.
Board colleagues, anybody have questions about this process? Anyone? I have questions because I always have questions, but anybody else have a question before I jump in? Michelle, how about Hassan and then Tab?
Okay. Thank you, Anne. So just to confirm, this is being sent to all registered voters in the city of Albany. There's not going to be any exclusions. There's going to be, I'm not sure how many registered voters there are, but, and are we going to be responsible for paying for those pieces of mail?
So I will ask that Ms. Bowie address that, and then if there's anything that's missing, we will have Mr. Honeywell.
Hi, good evening. As far as the registered voters, all of our registered voters who are registered through the Board of Education, Board of Elections in Albany will receive an absentee ballot in the mail. And that is at the district expense. And the second part of your question, could you repeat that for me?
Well, you answered it. I was asking who's going to pay for it. So, thank you. Do you know how much it's going to end up costing?
Those numbers are still being worked out right now. The ballot out to the voter, it should be costing us the first class mail, which is 65 cents per ballot.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, in addition to the mail, outgoing mail, which I imagine is actually going to go pre-sorted, so it won't be, I hope, maybe it will have to be first class. I don't know. I would hope that we'd be able to do it pre-sorted so it'd be less, but there's self-addressed stamped return envelopes. So that's an additional postage because we're paying for the postage in both directions.
That is correct. We're paying postage outgoing to our voters and incoming from our voters. And there's a cost for each.
But Tanya, correct me if I'm wrong. You shared with me some conversations you've been having with NTS about the pricing, and you'll only be paying for the return envelope that actually get returned to the district, as opposed to tens of thousands of paid for stamped return envelopes that never get returned. Is that correct?
That is correct. We are only paying for postage on the ballots that are returned to the district.
And Damaris, I see you're unmuted. Is that because you have a question or are you just unmuted?
No, I'm just unmuted. I apologize.
I have one.
No, it's okay. Tabitha.
Thank you. So our deadline for voter registration, just so people are aware, is May 29th. Yet we're going to mail out ballots naturally to who we have as a list of registrants already. So my only not my only concern, but one concern is people who have up until that period to register, how do they get their ballot? And also, what will be the content, if we know at this juncture, the content of the envelopes, like just the ballot or the ballot and instructions, and or basically what can we include and what can't we?
So once we have all of the guidance documents ready, we will start putting them out so that people know what to expect. But then also with regard to if they don't receive a ballot and they are a registered voter, what would be the process for requesting a ballot? So we will be looking at that process. And when that guidance is developed, we will absolutely have it out in a very timely manner, because we know that time is of the essence.
Can I ask a follow-up about exactly how we're determining who to mail? I know we're mailing every registered voter, but I know the executive order didn't say registered voter, it said eligible voter. And I think the eligibility to vote in the school district votes is pretty broad, right? Isn't it something like everybody who's over 18 and lives in the district? So if some are people who are not registered to vote through the Board of Elections, do they have to register with the school district by that May date that Tabitha said? I think in the past there's been affidavit ballots or those kinds of things. Do you actually have to register to vote, or is there a mechanism for you to vote just because you're eligible to vote?
So,
Mr. Honeywell?
So the executive order required that districts send to every qualified voter an absentee ballot. A qualified voter is defined as a U.S. citizen over the age of 18 years of age on the date of the election, living within the district for at least 30 days leading up to the election, and not otherwise disqualified under an election law provision. So it's a pretty big pool of individuals. In a district such as Albany that is required by law to have personal registration, you have to be a registered voter. Which is a slightly smaller group of people. There will be opportunities for qualified voters who are not yet registered to register, either through the school district is hosting a date for personal registration. People can show up in person to the district. You can register with the county by mail, and you can register online through the DMV's website. And Tanya, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe all of that information is going to be on the postcard and is also in the legal notice.
That is correct.
Yes, it is.
So the postcard is, are there two mailings? Is the postcard and the ballot? Are there two different mailings or one mailing?
It is two separate mailings. A postcard will be coming in the next week or so, followed out by the ballot.
Right. And so the postcard is just informative. You will be getting a ballot, that kind of thing.
Correct.
And did we get to a final understanding of whether we can do some sort of Scantron, fill in the bubble ballot, or whether we're going to have to individually scan, like with a grocery store style scanner, each of the 4 things that people will be voting on the ballot?
As of right now, we are going to be hand tallying the ballots. We do not have a scan ballot available for us at this moment.
Okay.
To elaborate on Tanya's point there, that's due to the fact with the primary election coming up on June 23rd, certain voting machines by law have to be sequestered before national primaries such as that. So that's really a county dependent, whether they're able to have enough machines to provide to school districts or not. Some of our clients are able to get machines, and some the county just doesn't have the number they would need in order to do so. So it's my understanding Albany County is not able to provide them to the district.
I'm wondering if we've asked, and if you have, I apologize for pushing on this point, because I am very concerned about the ability to tabulate. Who knows how many ballots, right? We really don't know how many we're going to have by hand. It's just going to be a huge amount of staff time that we're also going to have to build into our estimate of the cost. Have we asked the county if we could have one or two machines, because we don't need one for every polling place. We just need one or two for the central office where we would be actually counting these things. Let's say we get 20,000 ballots back, we'd have to count 20,000 ballots. I don't know how quickly we can scan them through the machine, but we can sure enough do it faster than we can do it by hand.
I have had a conversation with the County of Elections, and they do not have a machine that they can loan out to us to do any type of scanning of the ballot. Everything, all the resources are donated at this time to preparing for the primary election that is happening on June 23rd.
I'm so sorry. Can I cut in with another question?
Go ahead.
And this is just for, I may have gotten lost in the explanation that came out after I spoke, so forgive me. So I understand there's a postcard coming, and that's going to make things crystal clear for everyone when you're voting, how to register, how to get a ballot. But we are mailing ballots to anyone who's not an expired registered voter in the city of Albany, and it's not exclusive to the school board, correct?
My understanding, and I just want to add on to that because I want to make sure I get this true too, is we're mailing all those people, plus we're mailing anybody who comes to the school district and does quote unquote personal registration on the date that we specified in the legal notice that we adopted last time.
That is correct.
Does that help straighten it out for everybody? And Damaris, you're not muted.
I'm straight now.
Okay, so last time I think we talked about the possibility of using a grocery store style scanner where we would scan the ballot, zap it on the voted thing rather than literally hand tallying. Is that idea not come to fruition?
That is a theory that is still being worked out with NTS, our provider. They have not updated us with a definitive answer as of yet. I've put inquiries out. As soon as I get that information, I can definitely circulate those answers to you. But we are proceeding forward with a hand tally ballot.
Do we have an estimate of how many hours that staff time that's going to take?
No. No, not at this time. Not at this time.
Ms. Shomingawi, did you have a question?
Yes, and along those lines, do we know who will be counting those ballots?
No, we have not determined that yet.
I know we talked last time, but just for folks who weren't at the meeting last time who were listening from at home, I know we talked about trying to ensure that we had adequate observation, since we know that in general, the poll workers work for the school district, and with a hand tally, I know I'm going to be very wanting to ensure that we have the utmost transparency so that there can be no question that the counting was done accurately and correctly. Board colleagues.
So
any other?
I want to second what Lynn just said. Assuming, let's say we have 20,000 people, on an average primary election, we have about 15,000. So now that people don't have to go out to vote, let's say we have 30,000 ballots that come in, and there are 4 questions on each ballot. That's 120,000 tallies. There's that much room for honest errors to happen, right? And so I would really second Anne's suggestion that we look into some sort of electronic scanner just to make things, less likely to have a mistake or error or so.
Did we lose the superintendent?
I'm here. I'm saying, I'm sorry, I was muted. We will work on that process.
And we understand that no one here has ever done this before, and that the executive order was not constructed in a way to make it easy to do in a way that's sensible for school districts. So it is not in any way meant to be a critique or criticism of your efforts so far. it's just, it's worrisome. It's very worrisome to be doing something we've never done before at a scale of this magnitude. So
we absolutely understand, but I will just chime in that even as we as superintendents have been talking about this process since the executive order came out, we're all literally in the same position with what does it look like to count the numbers of ballots that will come in. I mean, I think we've expressed that in terms of it is a process that has to be developed. We are looking into what that means. We're looking into the integrity of the process, all of those things that from the last meeting on Thursday until today on Tuesday, I know that we are trying to get those answers. And it's not just us as the City School District of Albany. It's all, number one, it's all across the state, but it's also just from what I experience almost every day in working with the Capital Region. These are things that we're all concerned about. And at this juncture, there are no real answers to that. And so I understand the question. I understand what we are charged to do, but there are no real answers right now. And as we peel back the layers to the onion of how we need to resolve that, we will make sure that those responses come forward to the board, and we will do it in as timely a manner as possible. When we get the responses, we will be ready to turn that around.
we know that that's true. We're all just trying to do the very best we can here. Every single person is doing their very, very best. We know. Dr. Chatur.
And one of the things on our ballots is going to be the library vote too, right? Now, librarians are great for cataloging things and keeping records together. Maybe we can talk to the libraries and see if they have some solution for us in terms of scanning technology or barcode readers.
One of the challenges that we have is not just having the scanners, it's the actual printing of the forms with the barcodes. And so depending on where that comes from, who's the vendor that's going to be able to do that for us, the scanners may or may not align with the ballot that you have that is a scannable form. And so those are, I mean, they're just little nuances and intricacies that we have to work through. And it may not be a personnel matter unless we really have to physically count one by one for 4 items that are on a ballot. But those are things that we're working on so that we can see how that may be resolved.
We know you are, and we appreciate that. It would be interesting to know if the library has a mechanism for doing that. I don't know. They've obviously never been down this road at this scale. Tabitha, do you have your mute off because you have a question?
Yes, I don't know if I know you just stated, Superintendent, thank you, that this is like a series of unknowns and we're building the plane as we fly it. So I understand that. I was just curious if we or any district has gotten to the point where they figured out who is the like neutral third party who's going to tally and review the votes and things of that nature.
Not to my knowledge. And the superintendents in the Capital Region, we meet roughly 3 times every morning at 9 o'clock, and that's not come up yet. So again, as soon as we have some resolve to that, I will absolutely let you know.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Anybody else have a question about the budget process, registration, how this all goes?
One quick question. I mean, in this whole COVID situation, people have, lost their jobs, might have moved, and there's a lot of migration that has happened. Their addresses may not have been updated. So is there anything quick that or important that they should think about, do, so that they're registered, but they still get the bill?
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, one of my many past career experiences is as doing direct mail, and the post office maintains a national change of address database, and any professional mail shop sends the address through that national change of address database before it gets mailed, and that's part of the way you get your discounted postage rate. So I assume that they would do that and a combination of voter registration changes.
And I have a question.
Go ahead.
So, those who either lose the mail, don't get the mail, for whatever reason, what is their actions? What do they need to do to get a ballot?
So that's part of the process that we will develop in terms of when they don't have a ballot, when they have not received one, we have to put that guidance out, and that will be included in the information that is sent out so that then they'll know what that process is. But at this juncture, we have not developed that guidance yet. But it would be very similar to what we have done in the past, in that there would be some outreach or connection to the board clerk or to the superintendent's office, so that we would know who did not receive a ballot, and then we would be able to make sure that there's one that's sent to them. Or they may be able to pick one up, but we would have to work through that guidance.
And just to be clear, I think you know this, Hassan, but others may not, that when the ballot comes back, we know who sent it back. It's on the outside of the envelope. So there's no way you would get two ballots and be able to return them both. That's not an option because we know that we've gotten two ballots. We don't know what's inside. We don't know how you voted, but we know that you voted and returned a ballot. So it is possible that somebody could return two ballots, but they wouldn't be able to be both counted. I'll leave it to the lawyers to tell me what happens if that happens, but that it's not a problem of that happening without us knowing.
Ultimately, if you're going to receive two ballots back from the same individual, I mean, the first question is going to be in the process that's set up that the superintendent alluded to. You've got somebody coming to you saying that they're a registered voter in the district. You look in the book, it turns out they are. The first question would be, well, we look at our list of through NTS of who got mailed a ballot, and they were mailed a ballot. And if they did not receive it, we'll provide them with a ballot. On the chance that two are returned, then one does not get counted. And I actually believe both might not get counted. I'll confirm that.
Thanks, Chris. Ellen, did you have a question?
Sure. I just had a question about the scanning issue, and it was, have we consulted at all with our own technology people about our own scanning capacity as far as the sort of mechanisms we use to scan standardized exams? It's hard for me to understand exactly why we can't do it, and I'm sure it's been considered, but I just kind of want I wondered if Mr. Baker or someone could explain what kind of scanning things we have and whether they might be feasible to use for these ballots.
I haven't been directly involved in any discussions regarding this initiative. I can tell you that we do indeed have scanning technology throughout the district. And in fact, I did leverage that system to manage the distribution of our Chromebooks and our Wi-Fi hotspots at the moment. So I can't speak directly to this particular situation or the details involved in the balloting, but we do in fact have scannable technology within the district.
Okay, another lead.
Thank you.
Mrs. Adams, you have your mute
Thank
on?
you.
Do you have something to add, Mrs. Adams? I see you're not muted anymore. No? She's like, no, I just don't want to have to invent an entire new way to vote in 2 weeks. That's what I don't want. So thank you, Kent, and everyone for all of your hard work on this. We totally recognize, even though you can hear us being like, wait, why isn't this just solved? I think one of the things that I've learned over the years is whenever somebody says, why don't they just? It usually means they're not closely enough associated with the process to understand the complexity of it. So if you hear us say that, we apologize. We just need to understand the ins and outs. We know how tricky school district budget elections can be, and we don't want to have a misstep. So we'll back you up by asking you the questions so that you don't get to have the experience live and in person. You get to answer the questions in advance. Anyone else with questions really on any budget topic, because we have reached the end of the presentation. I don't think I've missed a slide.
There's more.
Just the budget calendar, just looking at our budget.
The calendar. Yeah, let's move on to the calendar. I forgot about that.
So this is our schedule. And so this is the same calendar that we shared last week. And so we don't have any changes to that calendar. So if there are any questions with regard to the calendar, we would be happy to address those.
Just basically, I have a question, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So along the lines of, naturally, we have hearings in advance of the vote and public input and things of that nature. So outside of people sending us public comments, do we have something designed for people to ask robust questions that they may not be able to obtain a response to, like in a live capacity? Like in the past, we've done virtual, for lack of a better term, budget presentations and things of that nature. So I was curious about that.
So typically what we do is we do an intro for those community groups where we schedule them, but the bulk of what we do comes after the budget is approved, and then we go out to those groups. So yes, we are looking at scheduling. In fact, we've held 2 meetings already with 2 community groups, and we are looking to schedule more after the board approves the budget. And then we usually go out and meet with different community organizations. And we will be doing that again, and that'll be scheduled through our communications and operations division.
And maybe we could do this year, which would be new for us. Again, another thing that's new, like so many things, we could do some that are not hosted by a neighborhood association, but are just generally open to the community, because we can do them virtually in a way that we hadn't previously considered. That might be something worth consideration.
We can do that.
Vicky, did you have a question? Did I see your hand?
I think that was Miss Wilson once again. I saw her hand go up. Am I wrong?
I did, but I was waiting. I wanted everybody else to go.
I actually have a question about the calendar also, and then you can ask your question if that's okay. We talked earlier when we were talking about the budget and the way it's voted on and the way it sets a cap and the way that any reduction to that cap, even if the money comes later, would prevent us from bringing people back. And I'm thinking about the way the governor might, as Kimberly said at the beginning, provide us guidance on a reduction as soon as this Friday, and how that might impact our ability to adopt a budget that would allow us the flexibility to maintain as many jobs as possible if, in fact, the federal government were to do the right thing at some point in July or whenever they might get to it. And I'm wondering if we want to wait till the 19th, as it says on the budget schedule, or if we want to consider the possibility of adopting the budget Thursday night, which I know is fast. And we've been talking about the budget for some time now. We knew it was a budget crisis, but I don't think the community has really been tuning in to this level of detail yet. And I expect we're going to get a fair amount of comment in the next couple of days, but it doesn't give community a lot of time to kind of catch up with us, which is a definite drawback. But if it would mean that we could protect the possibility of bringing some people back this summer or not cutting more people this summer, I'm just wondering if that's something we should even be considering, shifting that expectation. Board colleagues, any thoughts on that? Sandra.
Actually, Ann, I was hoping you could reiterate that that statement.
So my best understanding is that if we go with the calendar we have here, and Kimberly, you can jump in and tell me if I've got this wrong. If we go with the calendar that's here, where it says we would not adopt the budget on the 19th, right? There's 2 possible dates here, the 14th or the 19th. That's this Thursday or next Tuesday, right? If we don't do it this Thursday and we get an announcement about a budget reduction from the governor's office on, say, Friday or Monday, we would need to work that into our budget estimate. And then we would be putting forward to the voters a lower number. Let's say instead of 261, it would be 255. That's the maximum we could spend. So if this federal government actually does do the right thing and say gave the state of New York enough money that we got, say, $3 million. I'm making these numbers up. This is totally hypothetical, but let's just say we got $3 million. We would not be able to spend that money this year, 2020-21, because it would be over the cap, unless, as Jeff alluded to, it had specific language tied to it. But that's like a hypothetical on top of a hypothetical, right? So in order to protect our ability to keep as many staff members as possible, we would need to not integrate any reduction in the governor would propose on Friday. Now, let me be clear. If the governor reduces our state aid, we won't have the money. So we will have to reduce our employees to match the budget we actually have available. It would only become a situation if their money came back through the federal, through the feds, or through a later look back. Maybe the governor's going to be pleasantly surprised at the second look back and he's going to be able to give us money back. Like, there's a couple scenarios where we might get money back. But under either of those scenarios, we wouldn't be able to spend that money if we work the governor's reduction into the revenue number by next Tuesday. So that, I think we need to at least consider whether we want to adopt on Thursday rather than Tuesday, if our questions are adequately answered.
Right.
Ms. Mann.
It's in our best interest to adopt a budget on Thursday. Period.
Ms. Wilson, did you have something you wanted to say? That was, I assume that was the end of your statement. I heard a period there.
Yep.
Tabitha, did you want to add?
Not to that, no. I mean, I will now that I'm unmuted, but yes, I agree that we should, for lack of a better term, try to do the most to shield the district, because back to the earlier concept, these are our students. It's not individuals, it's not positions. These are for our students. And I think we can't put ourselves in a position where we'll continue to take blows like that.
Mr. Almanier.
I agree with my colleagues that have already spoken. I think that by voting on this Thursday, the budget on this Thursday, that given the chance that there's an injection of federal money, we could stave off some of the cuts that we have made or are going to make in the future. So I think it's probably wise to push this through if we can. Also, next Thursday doesn't give us or cabinet a whole lot of time to make adjustments based on any possible future cuts that the governor might, bring down on us.
Ms. Krejci. Ellen, are you trapped on mute? You're next, whenever you can unmute yourself.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Now we can.
Sorry, this is terrible. I really think because of, this hasn't been a year like normal years. This is the first year the state has done this look back thing. We're working a month later than we'd originally planned to have a budget vote. Everything's difficult. It's hard to go from a budget proposed to a budget adopted in 48 hours, but this is the only chance that we have, should funds become available, to use them. And I think that's something that we really have to do. I know there will be a lot of questioning of which specific cuts we made, but I think no one disputes that we need to cut this amount of money, and this amount of money equates to many, many positions. So trying to figure out, well, let's cut these people and not those people, let's do this and not that, And in doing so, losing the opportunity, the potential opportunity to save some of those people. It just doesn't, it's like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. I think we need to move quickly to preserve the opportunity to use those funds if they are restored.
Vicki?
Yeah, I just wanted to ditto the Ms. Krejci's comments and my board colleagues as well. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, we don't need to make this decision definitively. We can see where we are on Thursday. Obviously, I know each of you take your responsibilities extremely seriously. And if you feel that you don't have your questions answered about the budget, that we would not adopt. But it sounds like we'd be leaning towards adoption in order to maximize the potential for using any potentially restored funds. And I really appreciate, Ellen, you were calling out how unique and unusual this situation is. Often you don't know what the governor's budget is going to look like. Back in the good old days, the school boards rarely knew what their state aid was going to be when they had to adopt the budget. But this is the first year in my experience where you had any meaningful chance that the federal government might provide a relief bill that would ultimately result in additional funds after any gubernatorial reduction. So it's just crazy, and it's requiring us to do some things that are very different than the way we normally would do them. Any other commentary, questions? If not, we can adjourn. So I just don't want anybody to feel that they were cut off. Tabitha?
Yes, so just a question about when we get to the place of community presentations, just asking that, because this presentation was fine. It was needed for our continuity from when we started this conversation to the present. But I think that when we're talking to the public, that they're going to need something. And I think, but let me put it this way. I know you guys were going to come up with your own, community presentations, and they were going to be outstanding. But I was just going to speak more to how we talked about, like, no, we're not eliminating something, we're embedding it, and things of that nature. And also, like, as far as certain elements of having people understand, like, why we made an adjustment, like we didn't cut hall monitors, or we didn't cut something just arbitrarily, and and it wasn't made in a way that was like, to immediately disadvantage them, is because we have a certain direction we want to go in our alignment. And the types of presentations I'm thinking of that are really good about being illustrative like that, or when we're explaining to people why we are, making certain construction decisions. We are deciding this because this is what students need, and this is what we forecast will be, how we see things will go. So that's just an overall insight, and I know that you guys will work on it. And I just wanted to add that too, because I think now more than ever, we probably have a very captive audience, and we'll probably have a lot of robust discussions, unlike any year that I've been involved. So I think that it'll be really good to put some extra effort in that realm.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I don't want, though, it to be perceived that we've not been thoughtful, and that we also haven't made these cuts or reductions in alignment with our mission and vision, right? So, I mean, that's what I hear you saying. So we might find—
Exactly. Yeah, just make it very clear and very, like, this is for our purposes, but I think for the public consumption.
Right. Okay.
Ms. Craig?
I think to build on what Ms. Wilson said, I think that's a very good point. I know in the past couple of years, the budget seminars we had, there was a 101 of this is what this pot of money is, that's what that pot of money is, and people really didn't attend as much in recent years. But now more than ever, I think people need to know questions. Why, can't we just use community school funds to save some teachers' jobs? Can't we just use some capital funds to save some teachers' jobs? I think a better layout of those types of questions. A lot of the building money is money that's state aid money. It's not money that's coming out directly out of our pockets. Community schools money is right, unless the state ed department makes some major changes. Community schools money is tied to those particular schools and is tied to very specific enrichment type familial programs. I think that's really helpful for people to know, because people who are not who haven't devoted the past several years of our lives to this as we have may not know that. And if you don't know that, it makes some of the decisions we're making harder to understand. So in that context, I think giving people that context would be really helpful.
Yes, heavy on context.
Okay, anyone else? I know that one of the things that the superintendent is exceptionally good at is teaching people. Having been an old teacher from way back, her ability to convey information in a way that people can understand is a skill she excels at, and I have great confidence that she will put those skills to the medal when she puts together these presentations.
I would say a seasoned teacher.
All right. Anyone else for the good of the order? Otherwise, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Vicky, seconded by Hassan. All in favor of adjourning at this point? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We are adjourned. Have a good night, everybody. I'll see you in 2 days.
Good night.